What's going on, everyone, and welcome to Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. I am your host, Matthew Raridan. We've got ourselves a very exciting show today. There is just so much going on within the transfer portal, as you guys know. It just keeps moving and moving and moving, this chain that keeps just going. But yeah, we got ourselves a very exciting show today. I'm going to go ahead and introduce my co-host here. First, I've got David Street, and I've got
What's up, y'all?
Ed Smith. And we have a special guest today. He is the host of Hightop Sports. Check him out, guys. But this is Shelton Walker. What's going on, Shelton?
What's going on, Matthew? Thanks, you guys, for having me. I appreciate it. Really excited to be here and talk some ball.
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited as well. So let's just get this started. Last week, we started talking about the transfer portal and everything that's going on with it. There's just so much happening. And I brought up a point, is it an option or obsession? And I brought up several different instances of players transferring. And was it for a better option, or is it just more of an obsession? We talked about the likes of Joe Burrow transferring. He sat behind not Cardale Jones, but who was the Ohio State quarterback at the time?
I think it was Dwayne Haskins, if I
Dwayne.
remember
Yeah,
correctly.
and he went to LSU. He wanted that better opportunity, and well, it paid off. And so we just talked about players like that, but then we talk about players like, let's say, maybe Tate Martell. If you guys remember, Tate Martell jumped around from school to school, just never really found his rhythm, and became more of an obsession. But we are seeing that now where there's just really no loyalty, no it's just not faithful anymore. I get going for the next big thing. You want that opportunity, and that's what the transfer portal is all about. But it just, to me, you're seeing a lot of chaos. That's one word I could sum it right now. The transfer portal is chaos. So I really want to hear Shelton's opinion on this, his thoughts when it comes to the transfer portal, kind of where it's standing right now, especially maybe with the Florida fan base.
Yeah, it's mayhem, and I think there definitely needs to be a little bit of a barrier on there. It's free agency, but it's worse than free agency because there isn't a contract that keeps guys locked into place. And the biggest thing that I think it's really starting to hurt people, which we thought it would happen, and where speaking from the Florida fan base is people go out and buy jerseys. A lot of people bought Trevor Etienne jerseys this past year. Really excited to rep that. Thing's $150, depending on black or whatever color you get. And now he's gone. And it's not like they're going into the NFL, so you can rep that thing the next year. He's more than likely headed to Georgia. You are now the enemy. You are now a traitor. We hate you. We hope to smash you into the ground next year. And you can't even like hang on to that jersey, right? Like I'm in a place now where I get somebody, especially baseball, any sport, where they have to have played for the team for a handful of time and they committed a lot to that team where it's like they're always going to be considered a great to that team. I'll wear that jersey. I can't go buy a new guy anymore because you don't know how long they're going to be, if they're going to get traded or go into the transfer portal. So that part I think sucks, but I know it's great for the players. It gives them an opportunity. It's great for the guys like a Joey Burrow, right? We got a treat because of that. And that's where those are the highlights of it. But yes, then you have somebody like a Tate Martell. I love your analogy there, obsession, where it's just like trying to always hop around. You're unhappy or you don't want to work for it. And that's kind of what it looks like. I don't know if that's true or not, but Georgia, they've got 5 stars all leaving. You just committed last year. What's your reason for leaving? Is it because you know you can go and get a fat NIL paycheck and play right away? Maybe that is, and that's what you want. Then that's what it is, right? And I think that's why people are getting frustrated, and we're always gonna get frustrated because what college football has always been, it's you play for the colors. And I think to be fair, Florida fans, we're having a hard time wrapping our head around it because it's like, hey, if you're not a Gator, you're a Gator bait. You got to understand the culture. You got to understand what it means to be a Gator. Nobody does anymore, and nobody's going to. I don't think that we'll ever get back to that, unfortunately. And there's a lot of great schools that have those traditions. I think Bama, I mean, they'll hold on to it for a little bit because Saban's been there. You've had the same consistency for the last decade now, so you're gonna keep hanging on to that. Ohio State's even lost it. Ryan Day, I think that guy's on a hotter seat than more people realize. They can't continue to go 11-1 every year. It's just not going to work for them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you have like these powerhouses like Georgia that have always been known. Well, not always, but like kind of like Alabama, where they are just so recruit heavy out of high school. But then you have schools that are just really feeding into the transfer portal and really just kind of picking those guys out. So, but at the end of the day, I mean, Georgia, for the most part, they were back-to-back champs. They were there. and it showed with that recruiting coming out of high school. But now the transfer portal is just a different ball game. It is free agency on steroids, essentially. And there's so many court rulings, there's misunderstandings, there's a 14-day window right now. That's a topic for a different discussion, but it's just hectic. But I want to kind of just pass this over really quick to David, because I know he had several questions that he's really hoping to ask you for more clarity, possibly.
Yeah, like from one Florida fan to another, Shelton, what the hell is going on with the Gators in regards to recruiting and the transfer portal? Because at one point we're top three in recruiting, we're no longer in top three, and there's a legitimate chance that we might fall out of the top 10. And we haven't got, to the best of my knowledge, we haven't gotten any commits from the transfer portal, or maybe we have, and Billy Napier is just being secretive about it, like whatsoever. But we should be in desperation mode, but it just like everybody is just kind of resting on their laurels. So what's going on here?
Yeah, look, it's frustrating because again, top three class. I think that was always going to be a pipe dream to hang on to that and finish top three, but nobody expected to fall out of the top 10, and that seems to be a real legitimate threat now with the talks of Xavier Filsaime flipping. He's worth a lot of points, so if he were to flip, I think we would drop out of the top 10. And even with adding a few guys who we talked about, we do the calculator from time to time on our show. We'd be clawing to get back in. So look, to the part of it, they're being real secret. I've heard actually been hearing a lot of things come out of camp recently where there's some big time silent, people committing or liking Florida, but they're changing their way they're operating and keeping things real hush hush more than what they have. And I actually appreciate that. How sometimes knowing and hearing everything, it's like, dude, if I'm hearing it, like it's gone too far at that point. Like I'm nobody special for me to be hearing these things. So I'd rather say hush hush. If I'm Billy, I would start getting frustrated of like we can't move anybody anywhere without anybody knowing. But we have seemed to be moving kind of slow in the portal. Another part that people aren't looking at, they're just looking at what other teams are doing. They're looking at Lane Kiffin, they're looking at Coach Prime, and these guys just popping one guy after the other in the transfer portal. But look at the schools that aren't doing that. Georgia's not doing that. Bama's not doing that. Guys that have done a great job in recruiting. So don't get it twisted. I know we're not on the same level of recruiting, but the reason being is that they have these guys that are committed, 4 or 5 stars that committed. If they go and pluck a guy out of the transfer portal, now they have to be concerned about the kid they just recruited last year leaving. So it's a very fine art that they have to balance. That was something we talked about with Zach Goodall on our show on Wednesday. That their reason for moving so slow last year in the transfer portal was in fear if they go get somebody leaving. So it's tough. And you're like, well, how is somebody else doing that? Ole Miss Lane Princely. Since when is Ole Miss known for a defense? They didn't have an edge player that they had to worry about losing, nor did they have a recruit there because guess what? Ole Miss hasn't recruited. So not everybody has these pieces that they have to worry about losing. Colorado, he came out like 3 weeks ago and said, I'm replacing you on the offensive line. He's not worried about hurting anybody's feelings. When you got somebody like Billy who's came in and been very vocal about building a culture and building a process, I'm sure he's trying to be a little more mindful of that. Wide receiver, we just lost another one, the Alabama kid who we were in favor for. He just committed to Louisville. Everybody's losing their mind. It's frustrating to watch, but we also know we were frustrated because we didn't say Aiden Mizell or Andy Jean last year, right? This young core that's coming in. On top of this, another young core that's coming in. I'm sure a big part of Florida's recruiting tactic is you're going to play pretty quickly. Now, I'm concerned next year is that we're going to be like, well, our team's really young. It's going to be young again. So
Yeah,
hope
for
that answers your
sure.
question.
No, it does. And speaking of Billy, look, like we know that no head coach is ever perfect, but one thing that Billy was highly touted for when he took the job in Gainesville was his ability to recruit. And for a
Sure.
certain period of time, he certainly seemed to live up to that mantra. But as I said, we're longer top three. There's a legitimate chance that we could fall out of the top 10. But I want to know, Shelton, like, how much of this is really on Billy? And I'm not saying that Billy is completely blameless on this, but I'm wondering, like, how much of this is beyond his control? Like, how much of this is, how much of this goes back to people at the top? Because if or when Billy gets fired, and at this point, it's probably going to be when, unfortunately for Billy, but if that happens, and let's say he takes a job as an analyst at LSU, and LSU goes on this run where they land all these big time recruits with Billy as the main recruiter. Now, yes, it is LSU. They can recruit just with their name and logo alone. But still, and maybe it's the optimist in me still trying to defend Billy, but like, why do I get the feeling that this goes beyond his control? Am I wrong in thinking that?
No, not at all. Actually, there's been a lot of talks, again, behind the scenes. People kind of communicate with me in our Discord. We've got a guy talking about, hey, that it's more so AD in the UAA. What that means and who that is a bunch of old guys that make decisions. That's, I mean, to kind of keep it short and sweet. It's guys that have been there for a very long time that control a lot of the spend and how the program's supposed to operate, and they're kind of stuck in their ways. From what I'm gathering, again, I'm giving you the shorthand version. Like, I'm not there. I'm just getting it from somebody else where it's like they're not having this progressive mindset that we have to spend money on these players and be a little over the top and throw some extra cheddar here and there. They're more focused on building, which we always say in everything school. So the football doesn't hold the weight that it once did. Is kind of what I'm gathering from that. And so that's where the people kind of get frustrated with Billy. And it's like, I don't think it really matters who you get in. And then when things start not to go your direction, then you lose the booster support, because I think early on the booster support was extremely heavy and that can outweigh what the UAA is doing. But when things aren't going the way people feel they should be going, then you start tugging back and forth. So look, I'm always going to blame a portion of it on Billy, because to me that it always goes to the top. That's something that I've always explained and expressed. And again, and Xavier Filsaime, somebody that committed a very long time ago, that whole recruiting process has been an interesting one to watch. Amarius Williams, he just flipped to Auburn, or is being projected to flip to Auburn. That never felt really like a lock. Elgin McCray, when he committed, it felt really good, and it still seems to feel pretty good. DJ Lagway is another one. So there's still a lot of core guys that are committed, especially that linebacker class, Miles Graham, that are bought into the process and understand what's going on. I think you have to expect to get beat out by a team like Texas and Alabama. That's always going to happen, unfortunately. It just feels like it's happening at the worst time possible. I think it's more so what the problem is. But yeah, I think it's more than Billy, and that's what I always say. What do I say on the show, David? I go, if not Billy, then who? Right? Because if he's dealing with these problems, the next guy's going to deal with them too, unless he's able to navigate through it a little bit better. And people would always say Billy's in over his head, and I was trying to figure out what they meant by that, because coaching X's and O's, and I get speed and these things, and there's multiple ways we talked about it. But one of the problem is how he manages these boosters in the UAA. It's another animal, and if you haven't experienced it before as a head coach, you may struggle with it, right? Like somebody like Kirby now, and obviously a Nick Saban, and even a Brian Kelly. Those guys who've been doing it for a very long time know how to navigate these conversations, probably in somebody better than like a Billy can.
Yeah,
Good point.
really quick, I'm glad you really brought that up, because Florida, they have such a big and high standard. I'm going to compare really quick to Mario Cristobal at Miami. You see, he doesn't seem like he's under fire as much as Billy Napier is. And why is that? Because, well, Florida's more of a higher standard. They have expectations, and I've talked about that on here time and time again, is those expectations for Florida are they just mean more. So Mario Cristobal, while he's in Miami, it's just he's not off to the best start either, but yet there's not pitchforks there just yet. But I also want to transition. We talked about Texas earlier, and this is where I want to include Ed, because Ed is our Texas guy. But we just saw Malik Murphy enter the transfer portal, and this is where I feel like they need to have a set of rules. I'm not saying out of impulse, but this really impacts things. Granted, not every team has a third string quarterback named Arch Manning, but Arch Manning is their third string quarterback, and now he is upgraded to their backup quarterback going into the college football playoff, because Malik Murphy is in the transfer portal. And they just really need to get on top of things. They need to put a lid on this, because with this window, Malik Murphy is now gone. He's gone. He's no longer on Texas, and they will be without him, say if anything happens to Quinn Ewers. So I want to get your opinion really quick, Shelton, and then I want to get Ed to jump in on this as well.
Yeah, and to kind of, I wanted to address Mario, because he was in the hot seat, but he's recruiting heavily, very well at the end here. He's closing strong, and something that Billy lacked to do last year was show progress on the football field. Miami showed a lot of progress on the field this year. They honestly had a worse year the first year. Probably would benefit Billy if he probably would have lost more games, because then he could have looked like he turned things around. We looked like we kind of went backwards, where Miami, although they didn't have, I think they won 7 games, right? 6 or 7.
Mhm. They went
And they
7 and
won
5. Yeah.
and they went 5-7 the year before. So they made progress.
Yeah.
And outside of a hiccup against Georgia Tech, They're 8-4, and maybe one more game because that game doesn't put a sour taste in everybody's mouth, right? So he's turning things around. As for Texas, yeah, think about that, right? With Malik Davis and how important he was to Texas when Quinn Ewers went down. Imagine he's not there. Texas probably isn't in the Final Four. They drop a game. I see them dropping a game with Arch Manning coming in because Arch, obviously nothing against him, but I don't think he's not the 5-star talent that they labeled him as. And that's not me being like the hater. Like, he shouldn't have been a 5-star. He's a perfect scorer. He should have came in and been fighting, I think, a little bit harder for the second spot. But that's besides the point. I think they lose that game. They lose a game or two because there were some close ones there with Malik Murphy. So look, for the portal, someone like him, I think it works out. I like it for a player like Malik Murphy. He's like, I'm not going to play. I'm sitting behind Quinn Ewers, who's great, and it's, fight for competition. It's like, I'm not beating this guy out. But that doesn't mean I'm not great. That doesn't mean I can't go start somewhere else, just like a Joey Burrow. So I don't hate that. I don't hate it at all. But look, if you're Texas, you're going to be punching air because it's like, dang, we built a good squad. We built a good quarterback room. It's exactly what you want to happen when something goes down. It doesn't matter. When he went down, I was like, when Quinn went down, I was like, if I'm Texas, I'm pumped. Get to see what Malik's able to do. Like, that guy's that good. I was like, it could have been him this year. That's how, when it went down, I was like, that's not even that big of a deal.
Definitely. And I totally agree with you. Malik needed to be the person to come in against Kansas State because that was a game that could have easily gone the other way, especially with the way Kansas State came up and made those adjustments at halftime and came through in the second half. You're exactly right. With the running back room that Texas it is very similar to what you're talking about. Us losing Jonathan Brooks. Having that room behind him is what has propelled Texas into the playoff here at this point. My only question on it is why the transfer window being so short and before any bowl games, so that way somebody that has been there through the struggle of getting into the playoff is not allowed to be part of the team when they are in it. That window is just such an odd placement. Also, right in the middle of a recruitment cycle, it is just insane to have all that happen at once, right after the regular season ends, and before you're supposed to play this marquee matchup game, a month away, which is part of the problem with the scheduling of college football, in my opinion, anyway. But what are your thoughts on the transfer window, the time frame, and where it's placed within the calendar?
So I thought it's only open for 14 days. So it opened up I thought because last year was open until January.
It's open 14 days.
So I think there's a loophole because I know it's open for 14 days, but people were entering and leaving and doing all these things well into March last year. So I don't know how strict these rules actually are, but the problem I think you're spot on with if I'm college football, I'm like, we're ruining the money bag part of the season. Like, nobody cares about bowl games anymore. And when you put this transfer portal window like this, you're also stating that you don't care about bowl games anymore. The 12-team playoff will help that a little bit, but you saw guys, Jackson Smith sat out for Ohio State in the damn playoffs last year. So, and that's just going to happen regardless. I don't think we can really, there's nothing that's going to, avoid that from happening. But yeah, the portal, I didn't think about that. Malik Murphy, obviously, something happens in the first game, right? Malik Murphy comes in. Like I said, Texas doesn't really miss a beat. Arch Manning comes in, you're going to have a shoe real quick, right? That's how quickly things could change. So that didn't even dawn on me that, how important it is for him to leave, who could have an impact and possibly come in and step in. And maybe, Quinn is struggling a little bit. And it's like, hey, we need a spark, be that guy. But Malik has to make a business decision because of the transfer portal. I didn't even cross my mind. So that's I'm not a fan of that. I think they need to figure out how to move it. And we've also been stating too, being a college football coach is not fun anymore. When are you off? There, like I said, there really isn't. I know there's like a 14-day window, but I don't truly feel like there is because people are still gonna be able to go in and out and leave whenever they want. They were doing it last year. So how strict that window is, I don't know. I think once they leave, obviously once it closes, schools aren't as actively looking is probably what that window does more than anything. Is it's just a market. So when the market opens, like a stock market, everyone's looking at it. you can always kind of buy and sell after hours, but it's not as bumping, so it's not as impactful. So yeah, I think it definitely needs to change, especially if you want to put more emphasis on the bowl. You shouldn't make a player choose about being part of the team. They worked so hard to get there, and he was a huge factor into them making it. Now it isn't good to be there. That sucks. I didn't even didn't even think about that. That's crazy.
Well, and I do feel like getting kids on campus is actually part of uh, a 3-section issue that is all tied in together as one big thing right now. The ties to each need to be separated, and that's transfer portal, recruitment, and NIL. Because NIL is a separate thing from transfer portal and recruiting, but it ties into both,
Yeah.
and it all just becomes a convoluted mess. So, how do we look at college football and separate those? And, with the timing that we're talking about, does that hurt even more so with 41 bowl games that we have on the docket now, and increasing the number of those opt-outs because they're looking to find these transfer portal tamperings, because we all know that it's happening, as well as seeing who is willing to pay for that recruitment and movement to another team.
Yeah, I think that's another big point too, right? Because like you said, the 3 parts, early signing day is coming up, the 20th, which is basically signing day now. I mean, about 95% of the kids sign, and you're also trying to get guys from the portal, and which is the issue I was just talking about with Florida and the NIL, right? You're trying to buy a recruit, you're trying to buy a guy in the transfer portal, and I may not need to get this guy in the portal because this recruit will be an impact pretty quickly. But I don't know if the recruit's going to stick. And so it's a juggling act that shouldn't be there. And again, it's nobody's fault but the NCAA for making them having to make these decisions in such a short window. Yeah, it's a mess. It's always been a mess. And then again, the bowl game's just right smack dab in the middle of it. And you think about it. You're trying to have. We're getting photos of coaches in home visits. You've got kids that are visiting. I'm like, who are they visiting? They're with LJ in Texas or whoever, Xavier in Texas. And I got so-and-so coming to Florida this weekend. Who's talking to Katie Turner? Like, ooh, she's one of the recruiting ladies. Like, how are you? Well, the gas bill in that plane's got to be ridiculous. Like, that's where our NIL's going to, just going to in-home visits and trying to get back in time for it's mayhem. I don't know how anybody's able to do it. Nick Saban was on Pat McAfee today. How do you have time to be on Pat McAfee, Nick?
And the last thing that I was going to ask about is, how large of a recruitment department does a school need to have to be at this high level that we as blue bloods, Florida, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, how large do those departments need to be to stay competitive because of having so many aspects that they're having to stay on top of?
Florida has I think the biggest staff in a Power 5, or one of the biggest. It's not working. So I don't know the number because they have the quantity, the quantity, and it's not doing them any favors. But yeah, I think that should probably be a process too, that hey, we'll allow 10 more assistants that you can bring on staff to manage the load that is now being brought on due to the fact that the NIL, it's a whole nother season. It's like NFL draft, they have obviously off-season free agency plus a signing day / the NFL draft, but it's chunked out, right? It has an actual window where you function from. And I think with as far as much as it is just like the NFL now with the kids being played and there's a salary cap, just copy the NFL. The blueprint's already there. You act like you're the NFL now. We were actually talking about the other day. I think the NFL does a phenomenal job advertising. They get you excited for somebody pissing in the wind. They're like, yeah, this is going to be a great day. It's going to be a good day. And I thought the SEC, they had an entire show on Wednesday of the schedule release. The schedule's been out for months. The only thing that we got were the dates, but we knew who we were playing 3 months ago, and they had an entire hell, we talked about it, right? Like, it's just that's marketing. That's advertising. There's nothing more to wrap that thing up than it's them just how can we figure out how to be in front of these people and keep football on their minds more often. NFL's got it figured out. I think you've got plenty of months that you can try to spread this thing out, where college football, it's always in our face, especially with recruiting, but the portal, I believe, allows for that. But Problem again is because you have to get enrolled before January, so you're at school. So I don't know. I don't know where you do. So I don't get paid the big bucks. I don't know what you would do.
Yeah,
I'm processing through my head. I'm like, I don't know what you would do.
I gotta say, Shelton, I think you make a really good point when you say that, like, coaching college football just isn't fun anymore. Like that's why, like, I always get so amazed whenever these rumors are swirling around about NFL head coaches taking jobs at college. There's a rumor that Dan Campbell was going to consider that he might take the Texas A&M job, and Texas A&M, if I'm correct, is his alma mater. But it's like in the NFL, you don't have to worry about recruiting. You don't have to worry about the transfer portal. Really, all it is just managing egos. And it seems like in college football, like you really have to be obsessed with football. Like you have to live, breathe, sleep, eat it every single day. I mean, Kirby Smart often talks about how he's recruiting every single day. Like I think a big part of what makes Kirby Smart so good is that he is obsessed with what he does. I mean, like sometimes you got to wonder if he even has time at all for his own personal life, you know?
There's no way. There's possibly no way. And I see it. I'm like, dude, I feel bad for these guys. Like they're humans just like the rest of us. And everyone's like, look, they sign up for it, they get paid. I'm like, yeah, I know they get paid for it. But yeah, the NFL, they don't have to worry about those things, man. It's just X's and O's. And yes, they have to manage egos. It's nowhere near these kids, these high school kids' egos. You got a 17, 18-year-old kid getting tossed a million. That look, hey, we've been 18, right?
Mhm.
You get a little cockiness, and you know how you feel. You know, you're untouchable, and that's what makes I think being young great. But the guys in the NFL, they have an ego too, but they've been punched in the mouth. They've been settled down a little bit, and as you get older, you realize like what's actually important. So it's a little bit of a different ego management style, and it's very easy to go, dude. I got 10 more just like you, and you really do, right? Like some guys that comes into college, it's like that kid's good. He's gonna make a difference on my team. The NFL, that margin of error is super super thin. There's very few players that, in my opinion, make an impact, and that's why the quarterbacks, right? They can control a game. I believe edge rushers like a Nick Bosa, Chase
Mhm.
Young, Myles Garrett, those guys, in my opinion, they get paid. They're getting paid a lot more because they actually can impact almost every play of the game. They're not touching the ball like a quarterback is, but they have a lot of influence. Wide receivers, they're a dime a dozen. Running backs are a dime a dozen because there's just so many of them now. They're all elite. That fine margin of error is so thin. That payment for those guys is getting smaller and smaller because they realize like, yeah, I got 4 wide receivers to throw to. Like you're great, but you're not getting the ball every single time. So
Yeah,
it's much easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that we need to give like a huge shout out though to these college head coaches because it really is 24/7, 365 a year. And I say that because I'm a Duck fan. And the day after the Ducks lost to Washington, Pac-12 championship game, Dan Lanning was on the recruiting trail already. There was pictures already being posted of him on that Saturday where I'm sure all four of us had our eyes glued to the Alabama-Georgia game and every other game that was being played that Saturday. But no, Dan Lanning, where was he? He was at high schools. He was working on recruiting, and that's just him. I mean, Nick Saban's been doing this for how many years now? So, I mean, they're huge props to them for maintaining this and still doing it. Granted, now it just every year is more competitive and competitive and competitive. So it does get tougher. But I mean, huge shout out to them. I mean, they have to work their butts off every single day of the year, even when it's the off season. So I
There
mean,
is no off season.
yeah, that's the thing.
Right?
Yep. So, but yeah. With that being said, though, Shelton, I really appreciate you having you on. Can you please let the audience know where they could follow you at and find your videos?
Yeah, of course. Hightop Sports. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube. Just type in Hightop Sports, should pop up. I know like Instagram, there's like an underscore somewhere in there, but I think if you just type in Hightop Sports, we should be good to go. We go live every Wednesday at 8:35. We have a great time. This is a great setup. You guys are incredible. The dynamic is fantastic. This has been a blast and a pleasure. I'm usually the one asking the questions and trying to keep it going. So I've always enjoyed doing these. I get to kind of just sit back and get to talk with you guys. So it takes a load off me. So I appreciate you guys having me. It means a lot. You guys again got a good thing going. So keep it up. Appreciate you.
Appreciate
Thank you.
you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, keep up the work. We'll enjoy watching your content.
Thank you guys. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
All right. So Uh, since our last episode, we have had some big news happening within all different sports. And I really want to go over one of the biggest things that happened. It may not be one of the biggest things to you, but to me it was. And that was Draymond Green. And if you have not heard, Draymond Green is suspended indefinitely right now due to his actions against Joseph Nurkic. And if you haven't seen what happened, I really suggest that you guys look up the video. I mean, when I see the video, I see a guy that, and I'm talking about Draymond Green here, who really wanted to cause harm, but you could see him kind of hold back at the last minute a little bit, and it kind of prevented further damage from happening. I mean, you could take it however you want, but that's how I interpreted it. And Draymond Green, this isn't his first instance. I mean, and I'm not even talking about his whole career. I mean, this season alone, this is his second suspension. So this isn't new territory to Draymond Green or the Golden State Warriors. This, unfortunately, is familiar territory for them. But the NBA has suspended Draymond Green indefinitely. And what does that mean? Well, I mean, they have not given a number yet. They have not given a specific time frame, yet alone a specific number on his suspension, because they want to allow Draymond to. They want to give him time to deal with the challenges that he is facing. But you know, what those challenges are, I don't know. That has not been made clear. But one thing that I do know is that the Warriors, they struggle when Draymond is not there. It has been proven before that they struggle. So is that trend going to continue here? I'm going to be interested about that, but I think Ed will be able to fill us in a little bit more on, well, what does this kind of mean for the Warriors right now?
Well, it means for the Warriors that the decade of dominance that the Warriors have had with that core four people in their organization on the court every night of Draymond Green, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Steve Kerr, you know, that we might be seeing the end of that reign take place, because it with Draymond Green not having a specified date for his return. It all depends on him. There's criteria that he has to pass before he can come back to the court. So without Draymond Green, is that core of the Splash Brothers enough to continue the excellence of what the Warriors are? Both of those players, the Splash Brothers, are excellent shooters, excellent basketball players, and that team has changed the game. But does that necessarily mean that they can continue to make playoffs and deep playoff runs and finals and win championships without having that third piece that did, in my opinion, the dirty work of of a basketball team, and with them being on the outside shooting from half court, him, Draymond Green being inside, you know, getting those rebounds, doing that physical labor that a power forward slash center is going to do. Are they going to be are the Warriors going to be able to continue that success? Steve Kerr's system, it is a hybrid of some of the most uh, successful systems that the NBA has ever seen. So he'll be able to plug in players and do things like that. But in the end, every system needs that Michael Jordan. Every system needs that Steph Curry. Every system needs, that Tom Brady, that one that makes it go longer and longer and longer. There's an expiration date on all of us. These players that play 82 games, minus rest days and whatnot, there is a clock on them, and a decade into the career, that clock is going to get a little louder year by year by year. So is it the end? Are we reaching the end of the Warriors dynasty? I don't know. But without somebody to do the work that Draymond Green does, it's it looks like the lights are going to get a little dimmer the longer we go without Draymond Green in that organization.
Well, we all remember, and this is a great scenario here. Is we remember, and this was, I want to say, was it the second three-peat of when Michael Jordan said, "I want Dennis Rodman." They told him, "Rodman can't score. I don't care. I want Dennis Rodman." Well, why do you want him? Because he will get every rebound. He will play through every single play. He will give it his all. And he will be that guy that puts his body out, that is a facilitator. I mean, he is he's just powerful out there. Maybe not the biggest dude, but just a baller, but maybe just can't shoot. Well, that's Draymond Green for the Warriors. See, when they got Dennis Rodman, the Bulls won 3 straight championships. You had Jordan, you had your greatest of all time, just like the Warriors have Steph Curry. But it was that key piece of having Dennis Rodman there that helped them win those championships. And you better believe it wasn't just Jordan. And the same thing can apply with Draymond Green when it comes to the Warriors. So I think there is. I mean, the tides are turning. It's changing a little bit right now in Golden State, and that has nothing to do with their great players they have there with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Steve Kerr as their head coach. But it does just kind of change overall the atmosphere there. But I'm going to ask you this, David. I mean, Draymond Green, is he the best role player of all time, or the best in your time?
He's definitely not the best role player of all time. I mean, I think you have to. That title clearly belongs to Dennis Rodman. No question about it. Best role player of my time. I don't know if I would say that, but I would probably subscribe to the notion that he's the best role player of the last decade or so. Like people clown on Draymond, but people forget that when the Warriors were in the midst of their dynasty, Draymond Green was a huge integral part of that, and there was a point where he was arguably the best defensive player in the league, and I think he won a defensive player of the year. He might have won another, I don't know, but I know he won at least one defensive player of the year. And he's a guy who knows his role, and in fact, a very Draymond-esque stat. And this happened like almost 10 years ago, like right when the Warriors were kind of in the beginning of their dynasty run. But he put up a triple double with no points. Like, do you understand how hard that is to do, or even like how rare that is to do, to put up a triple double with no points? Okay, again, talk about knowing your role. And if you look at Draymond Green's underlying numbers, I mean, you guys kind of implied it. He's still playing at an NBA level. Like he's not playing bad at all. But the problem is that like at what point do we just dismiss your antics because well you're still playing at a decent level, right? Because you said yourself, Matthew, this isn't Draymond's first incident. I mean, we all remember him choking Rudy Gobert, and let's not forget when he punched Jordan Poole right in the face. So again, I think Draymond is still performing at a decent NBA level, but at what point do you ignore the antics that he's putting up? Or like obviously the NBA isn't ignoring it because they suspended him indefinitely, but I think you know what I mean.
Well, when you look at what Draymond Green has done in the last calendar year, you're talking 4 suspensions due to conduct on the court. 4 of the 6 suspensions that he's had in his career have been in the last calendar year. That is a huge number, and it makes me think in some ways the same way that the organization of the Warriors and the NBA are thinking, that there's something going on there with Draymond Green that he needs the time to work out without having basketball be his primary focus. So it's not about him just being a player, it's about him being a person, and that's what they want to help move him past.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I totally support that. Draymond Green is still a really good basketball player that it's you need to take time off. You need to regather things. We want to have you back here because you are a key and vital part of our team and of the success we've had. But we need you to fix this. These antics, these things that are happening, it's a reoccurring, instance that we just need that to stop. So I totally support them doing that because this isn't something of we're going to slap you on the wrist with a 10-game suspension and then what? He's just going to come back and be himself, like, the same that he always has been. But now this is something that he really needs to reflect on, and they didn't put an expiration date on it. So it's kind of a psychological thing that it really needs to happen. I mean, we saw what happened with the Cavaliers when he was suspended the one game there, and that was in the NBA Finals. And we saw the Cleveland Cavaliers come back and win that. I mean, and that some say the Warriors choked. Maybe it was LeBron's success, but that suspension was a big thing. But speaking of choking, we last year we saw one of the biggest choking performances of all time, and that was the Chargers against the Jaguars in the playoffs. And everyone, and I mean everyone except Brandon Staley, or if you had the last name Staley, was saying, why is that coach not fired? Gee, I don't know. I really don't know why he wasn't. But, Chargers, let's just give him some more time. Maybe he'll do better. I mean, how bad can our team be? I mean, we got Justin Herbert, yeah, okay, but Brandon Staley is a defensive minded coach. Oh yeah, well, we got Derwin James, we got Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack. Sure, I mean, he's a defensive guru. We're gonna be great, right? No, you're not gonna be great. And last night we saw a dismantle of the Chargers against the Raiders, who are also playing a backup quarterback right now and a backup I'll say interim head coach. And they made you look stupid. They made you look foolish. And most were calling for his firing at halftime. Richard Sherman himself said that this guy needs to be fired at halftime. Well, yeah, he also should have been fired last week, last month, last year, but that didn't happen either. So, yes, we had the breaking news today, day too late, that Brandon Staley has been relieved of his duties as head coach, not only him, but the GM, and now, as of recent, the defensive line coach. So, David, how do we get here?
Well, I mean, you said it yourself, Matthew. Frankly, Brandon Staley should have been fired last year when the Chargers choked that big lead against the Jaguars in the wild card game. I mean, the Chargers were up 27 to nothing and 30 to 14. There was no excuse to blow that. But there's several factors here, Matthew. But to me, I look at two main things here. Okay, one, the Chargers under Staley were an even 24-24. That is simply an unacceptable record to have with the players that they have on that roster. Okay. And number two, and you also kind of said it yourself, Matthew, this guy is supposed to be a defensive guy. And yet, the Chargers have never had a good defense under Staley. In fact, their best finish in total defense has been 20th, and which was last year, I think. That's how bad their defense has been. And yeah, I understand injuries and all that, but like at some point, man, that just becomes an excuse. Like you can't use the injury excuse anymore because as the head coach, it is your job to get everybody ready to play. First stringers, second stringers, third stringers, the cashier at the local Publix, okay? Because you always have to anticipate that somebody is going to go down. And if you don't anticipate that, if you don't prepare that next player to be that next man up, that's on you, man. That's your fault. And then just I know this is going to sound kind of, mean spirited here, but like, am I the only one who thinks Brandon Staley is just a genuinely unlikable guy? I mean, like, is he really the kind of coach that you would want to play for? I mean, you remember when he just went off on the media, and far be it from me to defend the media, but when he was like, "I'm going to be calling the plays on defense," okay, You don't need to ask me that anymore, okay, buddy. I understand the media can be hectic. I get that, man, but you kind of came across as an a-hole there, all right? But yeah, a day too late, man. It's about time. I'm sure Staley will land on his feet sometime, but he was a horrible, horrible head coach.
Yeah, he just wasn't ready, in my opinion. I think the Chargers saw all these other young coaches being picked up and their success, and they thought Staley would follow suit. But granted, the ones that are having the success are offensive gurus for the most part,
Hmm.
not these right now defensive gurus. Supposedly that he is. I just don't think right now head coaching is his niche. But the Chargers, though, where do they kind of go from here? What do they, what do they do now? I think that they kind of take it a little easy. There's not a sense of urgency right now because they aren't making the playoffs. Justin Herbert, is hurt. That's your franchise quarterback right there. But they need to find someone that is going to elevate Justin Herbert. They need someone that's going to let Justin Herbert do his thing. Am I saying that Justin Herbert is the best quarterback in the NFL? No, he's not, nor has he proven that. He has proven a lot of things, and he has proven that he can be great, but he needs someone that's going to help elevate him there. That's why they brought Kellen Moore over here, first year offensive coordinator this year for the Chargers. And I think they're really wanting to see how that experiment works. But they need a head coach that, like I said, in addition to Kellen Moore, is going to help build Herbert into an all-pro type of quarterback. And of course, you hear the names that have been floating around a lot lately. The Ben Johnsons of offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions. His name is almost everywhere. Eric Bieniemy. Frank Smith, offensive coordinator for the Dolphins. That's another name that may be going under the radar.
And keep in mind too that Frank Smith worked with the Chargers before, so there is that familiarity aspect there.
Yeah. So, and all three of those guys are offensive coordinators. They have proven that they know the offense very well. But then you have a guy like Dan Quinn, whose name's been thrown around, who is a defensive coordinator for the Cowboys. He's had some good success there actually right now with the Cowboys. But do the Chargers want to go that route again with a defensive minded coach? I think they're going to go to an offensive coordinator, and there is or offensive minded coach, I should say, because there is another name out there that's being floated around, and that he is playing in a college football playoff right now, and that's Jim Harbaugh. There is a lot of crap being thrown Harbaugh's way no matter what he does. Every local burger shop he goes to, he gets investigated on if he's buying one for a recruit. I mean, he can't escape it, the hamburger, But so it's like, why would you want to stay there? I get there are a lot of aspects of why he'd want to stay there. I mean, he has a chance to actually win a national championship this year. I mean, it still more has to be done, but Harbaugh, though, back to the NFL. I mean, he's stated before how much he really likes Herbert,
Hey,
but
real quick, I just want to say something real quick, and then we'll turn it over to Ed. But when Harbaugh steps down from Michigan, a business group should totally build a burger joint and call it Harburger in his honor.
absolutely, it's like when they made Mom's Spaghetti after Eminem. I mean, it's just it has to be done. It's already in writing somewhere.
I would
Someone's
be shocked if
trademarking it.
that's not in the moves right now.
Yeah, as it should be. But yeah, there's a lot of guys out there whose name's going to be in the hat. But we'll see what the Chargers do. But no sense of urgency. But I want to talk more about Justin Herbert, though, Ed. I mean, is this window of winning going to reopen for him?
Well, if you look through the past 50 years of NFL, a quarterback and head coach needs to find success within the first 5 years of them being together. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen. Part of Brandon Staley leaving is they have not had a rise of success. It's been a let's see how we can maintain success It's not a rise of success that leads to a championship, which ultimately that's what everybody in the NFL is trying to play for. And when you have a quarterback that everybody can see is the franchise quarterback in Justin Herbert, he is being wasted with Brandon Staley, and there's no denying that portion of it. But if you go through the past 50 years of the coaches that have won a Super Bowl after being at a location, more than 5 years, it's because they didn't have their quarterback yet. They didn't have the quarterback that was going to take them there. And the first example that I can give is Chuck Noll before he received Terry Bradshaw, in 71. He was already there for 6 years before that was the case. Tom Landry, it took him a decade to finally get, from being an expansion team in 1960 to starting the legacy of the Cowboys. The most recent and during the salary cap era example of that I can give is Andy Reid. He had been in Kansas City for 7 years before Patrick Mahomes comes along, and here we are. Within 5 years, they've already got Super Bowls to their name. And that's where it is. It's a 5-year gap that a head coach and quarterback need to hitch their wagons together to make it happen. Because if it's not showing that it will happen within the first 3 years, the organization just needs to move on. So what the Chargers, in my opinion, need to do now is find that head coach and be willing to pay for that head coach that will hitch his buggy to Justin Herbert so they can reach where they need to go. Yes, the roster does have players on it. I think it was a bit of a shame that Tom Telesco got let go as well. But general manager tied to the head coach. That's kind of where that comes from. Tom Telesco did not do a bad job building that roster. It was a bad job of the coach not tying his buggy to the quarterback and giving him everything that he needed to be successful. Brandon Staley has been one of those analytics guys that is like, oh, well, the card says that if I'm on my 20 and it's 4th down and 4, I should go for it. No, you shouldn't. You should punt that ball and then, use your defense that you're apparently the guy for to, further along your quest in that game. That is something that Brandon Staley, to your point, Matthew, was not ready for that job, but also there were candidates out there that the Chargers could have gotten, but they wanted to go on the cheap, go with somebody that looked good for a year as a defensive coordinator so they could feel like they were super smart by signing him. It didn't work out. You could have had a Sean Payton. You could have had a Brian Daboll, but you don't. And that is on the organization itself. So the organization needs to find a head coach and be willing to put down the money for the head coach that will get that 5-year window with Justin Herbert to get to the championship level.
Yeah, and look at Sean Payton now. He's doing an excellent job at Denver, and the reason why I say excellent is because we all know that Denver got off to a horrid start, and now they're either in the wild card spot or just out of it. So an insane in-season turnaround. Kudos to Sean Payton there.
Yeah, I mean, I hope for the Chargers that they make the right decision. They take their time and they make the right decision. They realize where they went wrong. I mean, they have to bring in a new GM. I mean, I don't know how they plan on doing that, but they'll find someone. But they scrapped house. They're starting fresh. So I'm eager to see what they do, and I'm eager to see the success of Justin Herbert. As being a Duck fan, I am supportive of him. I want to see his success. But there's no one out there more excited about this firing than my mom. My mom is a diehard Chargers fan. I love you, Mom. I know you're watching this, but she's been waiting for this. So I know when the news broke today, she was the first person I thought of. I sent her the picture as if she didn't already see it. And I was like, about damn time. And she said the same words back. She knows it and she's been waiting for it. And well, it finally happened. Now it's up to the Chargers to find the right guy. So we'll see if they do that. Maybe Phillip Rivers. But no, I'm joking. If they want to win, then don't pick him. But Phillip Rivers, good guy. But they really need to be strategic about this and pick a guy that they think could win. But that is about all we have today, folks. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I really appreciate Hightop Sports for coming in as well. It was awesome to have Shelton up in here. So he left you guys his socials. Please go on there, follow them. Great show that he's got going on there, and continue to like and subscribe and comment on ours. Let us know what your thoughts about on everything that's happening right now, because I mean, there's a lot happening. So let us know who you think the Chargers should pick up as their next head coach and their possible next GM. So, but until next time, guys, we are rounding third and we are headed for home.